The grand ballroom of Manhattan's Empire Hall glowed with luxury. Crystal chandeliers bathed the space in golden light. Orchestras played elegant melodies, and New York's elite mingled over champagne and caviar. The occasion was a charity gala hosted by Charles Renner, a tech billionaire known as much for his ruthless business instincts as for his eccentric personality. His galas were infamous for their extravagance and unpredictable stunts. This year was no different. Midway through the evening, Charles stood and tapped his glass with a fork, commanding attention. Conversations stopped. Cameras turned. He adjusted his tailored tuxedo and gestured toward the entrance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, a smirk playing on his lips, "you've all heard of my dog, Titan. I'm sure the rumors have made their rounds impossible to train, always barking, and frankly, more terrifying than any bodyguard. Tonight, I offer you a challenge. Calm Titan for 5 minutes, and I'll give you $1 million. The room rippled with laughter. Most guests knew the stories. Titan was a large German shepherd, bred for protection but raised in near isolation on Charles's private estate. Despite hiring the world's best trainers and behaviorists, the dog remained aggressively territorial and unmanageable. He bit 3 handlers in the past year, tore furniture apart, and had a reputation for attacking anyone who got too close, including other animals. Now, the doors swung open, and Titan padded into the ballroom. His thick black-and-brown coat bristled, and his sharp eyes scanned the room with hostility. A handler held his leash tightly, though the tension in his grip showed even he didn't fully trust the beast. As Titan entered, the music stopped, and a nervous energy filled the air. Guests shifted uneasily in their seats. A woman near the front clutched her pearls. Another moved behind her husband. The dog growled low, warning everyone to stay away. Charles laughed. "See, I wasn't exaggerating." Titan snarled and lunged slightly forward, causing a few guests to jump. Charles turned to the crowd. $1 million. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes of peace. Who's brave enough to try? There was silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when fear settles in. No one moved. Not even the dog trainers in the room dared step forward. Some whispered that Charles was reckless. Others wondered if he'd lost touch with reality. But Charles wasn't joking. He waved a check in the air, already signed. That's when a small voice interrupted the tension. "I'll try." Heads turned. Toward the very back of the ballroom stood a little girl, no older than 9. She wore a simple blue dress and white sneakers. Her dark brown hair was pulled into 2 uneven ponytails. Beside her stood a woman, her mother startled that her daughter had spoken up. The girl wasn't someone the guests had noticed before. She hadn't mingled, hadn't spoken, and had kept to herself since entering. Charles squinted. "Did she say something?" he asked. The mother stepped forward hesitantly. "My daughter. She said she tried." More laughter spread across the room, but not cruel laughter. Curious, confused, even amused. A few chuckles, a few whispers. Surely this was a joke. "And what's your name, young lady?" Charles asked, bending slightly as though addressing a kindergartner. "She's Lily," her mother answered. "She has autism. She doesn't usually speak in front of strangers." That comment drew more attention. Some guests sat up straighter. Others leaned in. The change in the air was subtle but real. Charles straightened. "And you think she can calm Titan? This dog has ripped through bulletproof padding, you know?" Lily said nothing. She didn't make eye contact. She simply began walking toward Titan, who now snarled louder, his handler tightening the leash with a grunt. Sarah, her mother, stepped forward quickly. "Wait, Lily, don't go near him," she warned, grabbing her daughter's arm. But Lily gently pulled away. Her eyes remained fixed, not on Titan's teeth or his growl, but something else. Something only she could sense. The billionaire waved the handler off. "Let the girl try," he said. "Let's see if her magic works." The handler hesitated. "Sir, she could get hurt. I'll take responsibility," Charles said, still watching Lily with intrigue. "Everyone here's signed a waiver anyway." The handler released the leash. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Titan, now off-leash, stood like a coiled spring, his tail stiff, his teeth bared. The beast was unleashed and a 9-year-old girl walked calmly toward him. Lily didn't run. She didn't panic. Instead, she stopped 5 feet away from the dog and slowly sat on the floor, cross-legged. Her mother covered her mouth, frozen in fear. Then something strange happened. Lily began to hum, softly, just a faint melody, rhythmic and gentle. A lullaby, maybe. Her hands remained folded in her lap. Her shoulders relaxed. The melody was simple and repetitive, the kind of sound a child might make to comfort herself. Titan's growling slowed. He tilted his head slightly. His ears flicked. The crowd leaned in. Every eye was locked on the girl and the beast. Lily hummed again. Titan sniffed the air. His breathing grew slower. He took a step forward. Someone in the audience whispered, "Oh no," afraid the dog might pounce. But Titan, didn't he sat, just like that he sat down, not out of fear, not out of training. He simply chose to dot, and then he lay down. His growling stopped. His ears flattened. His eyes, once sharp and angry, now seemed almost curious. Calm Lily kept humming. She extended one hand, not touching, just open. Titan leaned his head forward, rested his chin near her hand. The massive dog who had terrified the city's elite now appeared. Gentle. The entire room froze in disbelief. Charles dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, and for the first time in the ballroom's extravagant history, there was complete silence. Everyone in the ballroom stared, motionless, as if afraid the slightest sound might break the spell. Titan, the uncontrollable, snarling monster that had terrified half the guests, was lying down beside a little girl, completely calm. The tension that once filled the air began to shift into awe. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the photographers and journalists, who had been covering the event, seemed to forget to snap pictures. Lily sat perfectly still, her hand still outstretched, near Titan's face. The soft humming continued, like a lullaby for a child, except, the child was the dogent, the girl was the one giving comfort. Titan gently nudged her hand with his snout that it was more than obedience. It wasn't just that he had been tamed, it felt like something deeper. There was connection, trust, and peace. Sarah, standing frozen, a few feet behind her daughter, felt her knees nearly buckle with shock. She had seen Lily do something similar with rescue dogs before, but never like this. Never with a dog this dangerous, this unpredictable, in a room full of strangers. Her instinct had screamed to pull Lily back, but something in her daughter's posture stopped her. And now, seeing the most feared dog in the city lying down like a puppy next to her little girl, Sarah realized something the world had yet to see. Lily wasn't just different. She was extraordinary. Charles Renner slowly stepped forward, his usual arrogance replaced by something far more rare, genuine disbelief. He stopped a few feet away, his voice lower now. How did she do that? Sarah shook her head. She didn't do anything, she just is. What do you mean? She's been like this since she was very young. When she was diagnosed with autism, doctors said she might never speak. And for years, she barely did. But then one day, I brought home a rescue dog from the shelter. It was a pit bull, traumatized, violent. I couldn't control it. But Lily, she sat with it. She hummed. And it calmed. Charles stared at the girl and the dog, speechless. More guests began standing up from their seats, inching closer for a better look, careful not to startle the moment. Phone cameras started recording. Social media began lighting up as people uploaded video clips of the unbelievable scene. It didn't take long before hashtags like hashtag Lily and Titan and hashtag the girl who calmed the beast began trending. Meanwhile, Lily continued to sit beside Titan, still humming, still calm. The dog now lay fully on his side, his tongue out slightly, his body relaxed. It was as if he had always belonged beside her. One of the professional dog trainers in the room, a man named Dr. Raj Patel, pushed forward through the crowd. He had trained police dogs, military dogs, even lions for Hollywood productions. He crouched near Lily, studying the interaction carefully. She's not using dominance, he murmured, and she's not using traditional commands. This is something else. What is it then? Someone asked. Dr. Patel shook his head. Empathy, connection, a pure kind. Animals sense things we can't. She's giving off something this dog understands. It's not learned behavior, it's emotional language. Charles ran a hand through his hair, utterly baffled. I've spent over $200,000 trying to train this dog. I flew people in from Europe. I installed custom behavioral equipment. Nothing worked. And now a little girl just calmed him, Patel finished. No tools, no orders, just presence. By now, most guests had gathered in a circle around Lily and Titan. But still, the girl didn't acknowledge the crowd. She wasn't performing. She was simply being herself, completely tuned in to the dog beside her. Sarah finally stepped closer, kneeling beside her daughter. Lily, she whispered, her voice trembling. Do you want to come back now? Lily didn't answer right away. She placed her hand on Titan's head, slowly stroked him twice, and whispered something only he could hear. Then she stood. Titan stood too, but calmly, obediently. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He walked beside her like a trained service dog. The room exploded with applause. It was spontaneous and thunderous. Not because someone told them to clap, but because no one knew how else to express what they'd just witnessed. Some people cried. Others laughed, amazed. Even the coldest faces in the room cracked into expressions of wonder. Charles stood frozen, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew about dogs, about people, about control, had been turned upside down by a child. A girl with autism. A girl he had nearly laughed off the stage. He stepped forward and extended his hand. Sarah, right? He said to Lily's mother. Yes. Your daughter just made a mockery of the best professionals in the country. Sarah smiled slightly. She's not trying to make anyone look bad. I know, Charles said. That's what makes it even more amazing. Then he looked down at Lily, who was now stroking Titan's ears again, lost in her own world. I owe her $1 million. Charles added. Sarah shook her head. We didn't come here for money, but you earned it. That may be true, But Lily doesn't understand money. She understands feelings, connection. Do you want to do something meaningful? Do something that helps kids like her and dogs like Titan. Charles was quiet for a moment, then he nodded slowly. Maybe I will. The night had taken a turn no one expected. The billionaire's boast had backfired, but instead of embarrassment, it became transformation. Instead of spectacle, there was sincerity. And instead of a dangerous dog, there now stood a symbol of healing, brought to stillness by the one person. No one expected. Lily, the girl, no one had noticed when she entered the room. The girl who didn't need words to be heard. The girl who had just changed everything. As the clapping slowly died down, a hush settled again over the ballroom. It wasn't the same silence that had gripped the room before Lily approached Titan. This silence was different. It was reverent, almost sacred, the kind of quiet that follows something unforgettable. Everyone there knew they had just witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime moment, though few could explain exactly why it felt so profound. Titan now sat calmly at Lily's side, looking up at her as though he were seeking guidance. A dog that had once been feared, whose rage had chased away seasoned trainers, now seemed perfectly at peace. His leash hung loosely from his collar, forgotten and unnecessary. Lily, in her simple dress and worn-out sneakers, had become the quiet center of the entire ballroom. She didn't seem to notice the 100-plus eyes locked onto her, or the stunned faces of reporters furiously scribbling notes. She wasn't performing. She wasn't seeking applause or recognition. Her focus remained completely on Titan, who continued to sit patiently by her side, occasionally leaning into her hand as if he were a small pup instead of a powerful, unpredictable canine. Sarah took slow steps to stand behind her daughter, unsure what came next. This was uncharted territory. She hadn't prepared for this. They had come for a charitable night out, something lighthearted to distract from long therapy sessions and tiring weeks. And yet, in the span of minutes, Lily had changed the tone of the entire event, perhaps even something much larger. "Mommy," Lily whispered, looking up with soft eyes. "He's not angry, just lonely." Sarah knelt beside her, stunned to hear her speak. Lily rarely initiated conversation, especially in public. But now her voice was clear, steady, and sure. He didn't like all the loud noises. That's why he barked before. Sarah nodded, tears forming. "I think you're right." The media had now fully descended. Cameras clicked rapidly, and flashes filled the air like fireflies. A news anchor pushed forward gently, microphone in hand. "Can we speak with you both?" she asked Sarah, her voice cautious. But Lily had already backed away from Titan, humming softly once more. The dog followed closely, but respectfully. His body language remained calm, submissive, trusting. Charles Renner raised his hand and called for quiet again, though there was already silence. The room instinctively obeyed. He stepped up to a small portable stage, cleared his throat, and spoke with a tone no one had ever heard from him before, one that carried genuine respect. "Tonight, I invited you all here to raise money for animal shelters and elite training programs. I thought we'd see another round of demonstrations, auctions, and high-dollar performances. Instead," he paused, his gaze drifting to Lily. "I saw something I can't explain, something I won't forget." The guests nodded. Many still looked stunned. Charles continued. "This little girl, Lily, reminded me tonight that connection can't be bought, and it certainly can't be forced. Sometimes, it's just given, freely, and it changes everything." He stepped down and approached Lily directly, crouching to her eye level. "You have a gift, Lily. Thank you for sharing it." Lily didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply gave a small nod and reached out to gently pat Titan's head again. Charles looked on with an expression few had seen from him before. Humility. A woman in a navy blue dress turned toward Sarah. "How did you know she could do this?" "I didn't," Sarah admitted. "I knew she connected with animals. At home, she's always been able to calm rescues we foster. But this was something else." She felt him, understood him. Another guest, a man with a gray beard and a tear in his eye, added, "I've never believed in miracles, but I'm reconsidering." Meanwhile, social media continued to explode. Clips of Lily approaching Titan, sitting in front of him, and transforming his demeanor spread across platforms like wildfire. Within minutes, the footage had racked up hundreds of thousands of views, then millions. Users everywhere were captivated by the story of the little autistic girl, who calmed the uncontrollable billionaire's dog with nothing but presence and empathy. People began retweeting phrases like, "She didn't use words, she used her soul. Lily didn't tame the beast, she saw the pain inside it." The quietest one in the room spoke the loudest. Back inside the ballroom, guests approached Sarah and Lily with offers, some sincere, some opportunistic. A publisher asked if they would consider a book deal. A television producer whispered about a documentary. But Sarah kindly declined them all for now. Her priority was Lily. This wasn't about money, fame, or brand deals. One older woman, elegant and regal, stepped forward. She had remained seated for most of the evening, but now approached Lily directly. "May I ask something?" she said, gently. What made you go to him? Lily looked up. He was scared, and everyone was mad at him. That simple answer floored everyone. Even Charles, overhearing her words, placed a hand on his chest. Titan had been his symbol of control, his fierce protector, his million-dollar mistake. But to Lily, he was simply scared. Not bad, not broken, just misunderstood. The moment hung in the air like poetry. The gala resumed, but everything had changed. People no longer talked about who was wearing what or how much was spent on the auction items. Instead, they talked about Lily. They asked about animal therapy. They asked about autism. They whispered to each other about what they had felt when Titan laid down beside her, about how it made them think differently about behavior, about fear, about love. When the night finally ended, Lily and Sarah prepared to leave. As they reached the exit, Charles caught up with them, now carrying a portfolio of signed checks and donation slips. I meant what I said, he told Sarah. I want to help, not just write a check and walk away. I want to build something, in Lily's name, a place where kids like her and animals like Titan can help each other. Sarah looked at her daughter, who was now holding Titan's leash like it was the most natural thing in the world. That, she said, would be worth more than any $1 million. The following morning, headlines across America buzzed with a single story. Photos of Lily and Titan were everywhere on television, social media, and front pages of national newspapers. Phrases like autistic girl calms, untamable dog, the billionaire who was silenced, and the gift of Lily trended in nearly every major city. But it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a ripple shift in how people saw children like Lily and animals like Titan. In her small New Jersey apartment, Sarah sat stunned as news anchors spoke about her daughter with reverence. Video clips from the gala replayed on every channel. Lily walking up to the snarling beast, sitting cross-legged, humming, and the dog melting at her feet. She looked over at Lily, who was sitting on the carpet with a coloring book, completely unfazed by the fame. Beside her lay Titan, now a guest in their home. His large head rested gently on Lily's lap. He had become her shadow since the night of the gala. Charles had insisted Titan be brought to her until the foundation they discussed could be launched properly. Titan, once unpredictable and wild, now followed Lily's gentle cues. He'd trot behind her from room to room, never barking, never growling. Sarah couldn't believe the transformation. He no longer responded to typical commands. He responded only to Lily's presence. Meanwhile, Charles Renner was facing a different kind of awakening. Back at his penthouse, he watched the news unfold in disbelief. The girl he had once nearly dismissed had made him rethink everything: his ideas of control, of strength, of power. His phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists, CEOs, animal behaviorists, and celebrities all wanted to talk about Lily. Some called it a miracle. Others wanted to study her. Charles ignored most of them. He wasn't interested in commodifying Lily's gift. He was interested in honoring it. For the first time in his life, he had seen something that couldn't be engineered, bought, or manipulated: genuine emotional connection. Lily hadn't trained Titan. She had simply understood him, and that understanding had unlocked something no one else could reach. By noon, Charles had already taken action. He had his legal team begin drafting the framework for a new foundation, the Lily and Titan Project. Its mission would be simple: pair children with autism and other sensory sensitivities with rescued, misunderstood animals. But this wouldn't be another corporate venture. Charles wanted Lily at the heart of it. He called Sarah. I'm serious about building this, he said. Your daughter has a gift, and I want to help her share it, not exploit it. Sarah paused. She's not ready for attention. She doesn't want stages, microphones, or interviews. I don't want to make her a spokesperson, Charles replied. I want to build a space where she can do what she already does: quietly help others. No pressure, just peace. Sarah listened to the sincerity in his voice. She hadn't expected that. She had pegged Charles as another powerful man with good PR instincts and a habit of making things about himself. But his tone now felt genuine. She looked at Lily, still quietly coloring, Titan gently snoring beside her. We'll meet with you, Sarah said. But only if it's about the work, not the fame. Agreed, Charles answered. Just the work. 3 days later, the meeting took place in a quiet sanctuary outside the city, a small piece of land Charles owned but had never used. Surrounded by trees and open fields, it was peaceful, untouched, and perfect. As soon as Lily stepped onto the grounds, she smiled. She looked around at the wind blowing through the grass, the rustling trees, and the distant sound of birdsong. Titan ran across the open field and then circled back to sit beside her. Her humming returned, soft but steady. This place is good, she whispered to Sarah. Charles watched from a few steps away. Does she like it? She says it's good, Sarah replied with a gentle smile. That's high praise. Plans began almost immediately. Architects were brought in not to build hospitals or offices, but homes for animals, quiet rooms for children, and therapy gardens where both could meet without stress. Lily didn't give speeches. She didn't direct meetings. But whenever she visited, her presence alone shaped decisions. If she walked into a room and became uncomfortable, it was redesigned. If she smiled, the design stayed. Word spread fast. Animal shelters began reaching out. Parents of autistic children sent letters of support and requests for early enrollment. Therapists offered to volunteer. Something beautiful was forming, and it was all because a quiet girl had done something no adult could. Meanwhile, the gala footage continued to spread. It aired on international networks. Translations popped up in multiple languages. People from as far as Japan and Brazil sent letters to the Renner offices. Stories poured in children who spoke for the first time after watching the video. Dogs adopted because someone believed they too could be understood. One letter stood out. It was from a young boy in Utah who had autism. He wrote, with the help of a speech device, "I didn't think anyone like me could do something big, but now I think I can." Sarah cried when she read that. She sat beside Lily that night and said, "You helped that boy, honey." Lily didn't respond at first. She simply reached out and scratched behind Titan's ears. Then she whispered, "He helped me too." That night, Charles visited the land again. He walked the perimeter with his coat pulled tight, his hands buried in his pockets. For a man worth billions, he had never felt so small in the best way possible. He didn't feel like the powerful host of a grand event anymore. He felt like a student, watching something he didn't fully understand but respected deeply. And for the first time in years, Charles didn't feel the urge to be the center of the story. He was content to stand at the edge, quietly witnessing the kind of magic that couldn't be manufactured, only felt. As weeks passed, interest in Lily's story didn't fade, it grew. Journalists called it the miracle at the gala, but Sarah knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was a language the world didn't understand, a silent language between her daughter and the animals everyone else feared. Yet now, people were finally starting to listen. The land Charles had offered for the project, 45 acres of forests, fields, and freshwater creeks, was slowly transforming. Instead of high-rise buildings or slick corporate centers, architects worked with therapists, teachers, and even animal behaviorists to create a calm, healing environment. Lily's presence continued to guide the design process. She didn't speak often, but when she did, it shaped everything. One day, while walking through the under-construction sanctuary, Lily stopped near a fence where two newly rescued dogs, one shaken, one pacing, had been placed for observation. The caretakers stood nearby, unsure how to handle the skittish pair. Lily walked straight to the fence and knelt. She didn't say a word. She hummed. The pacing dog stopped. The trembling one slowly approached the fence. Within minutes, both were sitting, quietly watching her. It was like a switch flipped inside them. The caretakers were speechless. Sarah, observing from a distance, smiled through tears. She'd seen it before, but no matter how many times Lily worked her quiet magic, it never stopped being beautiful. That evening, a video of the moment surfaced on social media, posted by one of the caregivers. It instantly went viral, just like the gala moment. And this time, the caption read, "The girl with no words heals hearts without asking for anything." People around the world began to write in. Some wanted to meet Lily, others wanted to volunteer at the sanctuary, but the most touching messages came from parents, those who, like Sarah, once had felt alone, overwhelmed, and afraid their children would never be seen for who they really were. One message read, "My daughter hasn't spoken a word in 4 years. But last night she watched Lily's video and whispered, 'She's like me. Thank you. You gave us hope.'" Charles read the letter aloud in a staff meeting at the sanctuary's headquarters. His voice, usually bold and commanding, trembled by the time he finished. He folded the paper gently and placed it in a growing box of letters, labeled Lily's Light. "This," he said, "is what this place is about." Though Charles remained the legal founder of the Lily and Titan project, he never tried to take credit. Not once. He stopped attending flashy interviews and turned down every talk show invitation. His staff noticed the change. He dressed simpler, spoke softer. It wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about helping others be understood. He also spent more time at the sanctuary. Titan, now permanently in Lily's care, had changed him too. The billionaire who once kept people at arm's length found himself walking alongside therapists, animal lovers, and parents. He didn't need walls anymore, and Lily, she continued to grow. She started communicating more, not in long sentences, but in meaningful ones. She began drawing pictures to explain how animals felt. She used music to express her own emotions. She taught by simply being, without even knowing she was teaching. Therapists began documenting her interactions. One wrote in a report, "Lily operates in pure emotional intuition. She picks up on nonverbal cues, subtle shifts in posture, eye movements, breathing patterns. Most people don't even notice these things. Lily responds to them instinctively." That same therapist later said she had learned more in 2 days with Lily than in 5 years of formal training. One afternoon, a team of child psychologists visited the sanctuary to study the animal-assisted therapy model. Sarah was hesitant at first. worried they might treat her daughter like an experiment. But Lily surprised everyone. When the lead psychologist asked, "How do you know when an animal is scared?" Lily simply walked to a rescue dog that had refused to interact with anyone for days. She sat down and hummed. The dog crept forward, nuzzled her leg, and closed its eyes. Lily looked back at the woman. They don't hide their hearts. That single sentence became the mission statement of the Lily and Titan project. They don't hide their hearts. Children began arriving from all over the country. Some were autistic, others had speech delays, PTSD, or deep anxiety. And they came not for medicine or lectures, but for connection. With rescued animals, with music, with silence, they walked through sensory gardens filled with lavender, soft stones, and wind chimes. They sat in quiet rooms where therapy cats purred beside them. They painted, they played, and most powerfully, they learned they didn't have to be fixed to be worthy of love. Parents cried openly as they watched their children laugh. Sometimes for the first time in years, a 6-year-old boy who hadn't spoken since he was 2 suddenly whispered, "Doggie's happy," as he stroked a golden retriever's head. A teenage girl with severe anxiety finally removed her headphones and joined a group activity with miniature horses after humming along with Lily for 5 minutes. Word of Lily's gift had sparked the start, but now, the movement was bigger than one child. It was about belief that communication takes many forms, that healing doesn't always come from words, and that love, real love, listens in ways most people forget. Back at home one night, Sarah tucked Lily into bed. Titan was curled at the foot of the mattress, already dozing. The moonlight bathed the room in soft silver. Lily held a small plush dog in her arms. "Are you tired?" Sarah whispered. Lily shook her head. "I just think a lot." Sarah smiled. "What do you think about?" Lily looked toward the window, then at Titan, then back at her mom. "I think everyone wants to be heard, even the ones who bark." Sarah felt her heart melt again. And in that moment, she realized something else. The world had given Lily a label, but Lily had given the world a language, a new way to listen. And it was just the beginning. For a man like Charles Renner, transformation had always meant reinvention, launching new tech, building billion-dollar companies, or expanding into unfamiliar markets. He was used to scaling big ideas, but he had never imagined the most profound transformation in his life would come from a quiet little girl who barely spoke. Since the night of the gala, Charles had changed. It wasn't just the way he dressed, trading designer suits for jeans and flannel, or the way he spoke, which had grown gentler. It was deeper. His priorities had shifted. He spent less time in boardrooms and more time at the Lily and Titan Sanctuary, walking through the fields with therapists, watching children interact with animals, or sitting quietly on a bench with Titan. Beside him, he no longer measured success in stock prices or market share. Now, success was when a child smiled for the first time in months, or when a rescue dog, once terrified of humans, rested peacefully at a child's feet. That was real. That mattered. On a rainy Monday morning, Charles visited Sarah and Lily's modest apartment to deliver news. He arrived without assistance, without a driver, and without fanfare. Just a small envelope in his coat pocket and Titan at his side. Sarah welcomed him in, surprised but smiling. Lily was seated near the window, drawing something in colored pencil, a child on a swing, with a dog underneath, both surrounded by music. "Notes," Lily, Charles said softly. "I wanted to show you something." She looked up. Titan trotted to her side immediately, tail swaying gently. Charles handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph and a small certificate. The photo showed a peaceful green building, surrounded by trees, with a sign that read, "The Lily and Titan Center, a place for quiet voices and loud hearts." The certificate read, "Official transfer of ownership in honor of her light, leadership, and love for the unheard. This sanctuary belongs to Lily Grace Caldwell and family, in full trust and legacy." Sarah gasped, tears immediately forming. "You're giving it to her?" Charles nodded. "The land, the buildings, the foundation, everything. I'll still fund it. But this isn't mine. It never was." Sarah looked overwhelmed. "But Charles, it's worth millions." "No," he replied, "but it's not about money anymore. It's about meaning. And Lily gave this place meaning." Lily looked up at Charles, not smiling, but present. "Thank you," she whispered. "Done then?" Just as she had done with Titan. The first night, she began to hum. Charles swallowed the lump in his throat. "I needed that," he said quietly. Later that week, Charles held a small press conference at the sanctuary, not with lights, cameras, or headlines, but just a group of families, volunteers, and staff. "I used to think power was about control," he told them, "but this place taught me it's about care, real care." What Lily did at the gala wasn't a stunt. It was a revelation. She showed us that the loudest voices aren't always the ones with volume, and the bravest people aren't the ones who roar but the ones who listen. The audience applauded, many wiping away tears. From that moment, Charles became not just a donor, but a student of the sanctuary's philosophy. He joined sessions with child psychologists, walked rescue dogs alongside teenagers with social anxiety, and even began fostering animals at his estate. His staff at Rennertech noticed the change he became more patient, more thoughtful. Some even whispered that Titan had tamed not just himself, but his master as well. And the sanctuary blossomed. With the land legally in Lily's name, the center took on a life of its own. Therapy programs expanded. New cabins were built for visiting families. A music garden opened, filled with xylophones, wind chimes, and quiet paths designed by Sarah and Lily together. There were no bright lights or loud noises, just peaceful places to connect. A new wing was built, called the Listening Lodge, a space where children could sit with trained animals in silence, free of pressure or judgment. Inside, quotes from Lily decorated the walls. Not everyone speaks with words. Dogs don't get mad at you for being quiet. Sometimes, still is strong. Meanwhile, Titan had become a legend in his own right. Once seen as dangerous and untrainable, he now served as the sanctuary's therapy ambassador. He was gentle with the smallest children, patient with the most nervous animals, and alert whenever Lily entered the room. He slept outside her door every night. A loyal protector transformed by love, the sanctuary began getting attention from professionals. Around the globe, doctors, scientists, and psychologists traveled to observe the model Lily had inspired. But Sarah remained cautious. "She's not an experiment," she would say. "She's a girl who taught us to look differently. Please honor that." Everyone who visited the center was required to go through a stillness session, a quiet hour spent in reflection. Without phones, cameras, or notes. Just silence, just listening. Many left the session crying, not from sadness, but from a kind of awakening. One evening, after a long day of visitors, Charles sat outside the sanctuary beside Sarah. "You know," he said, "I used to laugh when people said kids could change the world." Sarah glanced at her daughter, who was inside teaching a rescued rabbit how to hop across a drawn maze. "She didn't change the world," Sarah said. "She changed yours, and now you're helping change others." He nodded. "Do you think she knows how much she's done?" Sarah thought for a moment. "No, and that's probably what makes it all so real." Charles leaned back, watching the stars. "I was a billionaire with no real peace," he said. "And then your daughter gave it to me with a single hum." They sat in silence for a while. The sanctuary behind them glowed softly in the night. Inside, Lily sat in the music room, humming gently as 3 children and 2 dogs napped around her. And somewhere in the darkness, the world outside kept spinning, faster, more chaotic. But in this one place, everything was quiet, everything was whole, everything was healing. News of the Lily and Titan Sanctuary had by now traveled beyond the walls of the quiet New Jersey property. Parents, teachers, therapists, and animal lovers from across the United States and, even around the world, had begun to reach out, seeking guidance on how to replicate the sanctuary's work in their own communities. Sarah found herself responding to emails late into the night, offering support, advice, and encouragement to families feeling overwhelmed by their children's unique needs. Lily, despite her limited words, became an inspiring symbol for many who struggled to find acceptance or understanding. At the sanctuary, a new program was launched called Voices in Silence, a series of workshops designed to train caregivers and educators to see beyond speech, to listen with empathy, and to appreciate the many ways people communicate. One afternoon, a mother named Maria arrived with her son, Diego, a 10-year-old boy, diagnosed with nonverbal autism. Diego had spent most of his life in silence, his frustration sometimes manifesting in aggressive outbursts. Maria was desperate for help. They joined a session led by Lily and a group of therapists. The room was calm, filled with soft music and natural light. Diego sat quietly at first, watching the other children play gently with small dogs and cats. But when Lily entered, humming softly, something shifted. Diego's eyes lit up. He stood, tentatively moving toward Lily. Drawn by her calm presence, Lily knelt and extended her hand without a word. Diego hesitated, then reached out and touched her hand. Maria watched with tears streaming down her face. For the first time, Diego smiled, not a forced grin, but a real smile filled with hope. That moment, like so many others before it, was shared widely online. Families found courage in Diego's breakthrough. They wrote letters about their own children, about the power of silence, presence, and empathy. Back at the sanctuary, Charles Renner was now fully devoted to the cause. He had used his resources to fund expansions of the center, building satellite locations in urban areas where children had fewer opportunities for nature or animals. He had partnered with schools to train teachers in sensory-friendly techniques and had launched an educational podcast featuring stories from parents, therapists, and, occasionally, Lily's humming. Despite the expanding attention, the sanctuary remained grounded in its original purpose, healing through connection, not spectacle. One day, during a quiet afternoon walk through the sanctuary's forest trails, Sarah overheard a conversation between Charles and Lily. "Why do you hum so much?" Charles asked gently. Lily looked up, surprised by the question. It helps me talk, she said simply. It helps me say things that words can't. Charles nodded thoughtfully. It's like your own language. Lily smiled faintly. Yes, and Titan understands it. Charles chuckled softly. I'm still learning to understand it myself. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden barking of dogs. Lily and Charles walked toward the sound and found a group of children playing with rescue puppies in one of the sanctuary's sensory gardens. The dogs, once fearful, were now joyful and energetic. Mirroring the children's smiles, Lily's eyes sparkled as she watched the scene. Later that evening, during a fundraising event, Charles took the stage. But this time, he wasn't boasting about his wealth or his past successes. Instead, he spoke humbly about the lessons Lily had taught him and the sanctuary's mission. The world often overlooks the quiet voices, he said, but those voices carry wisdom, strength, and courage. Lily showed us that sometimes the most powerful communication happens without words. The crowd erupted into applause. Lily, sitting in the front row beside Sarah, smiled softly and hummed along with the music that followed. As the years went on, the Lily and Titan project grew into a beacon of hope and understanding. Children who once felt isolated and misunderstood found belonging. Families discovered new ways to connect. And animals, once abandoned or feared, found love and purpose. Lily, now older and more confident, continued to inspire countless people not through speeches or headlines, but through her gentle presence and unwavering empathy. One afternoon, as Sarah watched Lily lead a group of children in a silent walk through the forest, she reflected on their journey, from a quiet girl who had silenced a billionaire's dog to a young woman changing lives around the world. Lily's story was a testament to the power of listening, understanding, and love. Sarah whispered to herself. She truly is the light in the quiet. Years passed, and the Lily and Titan project had blossomed far beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a single moment of quiet courage at a gala had evolved into a nationwide movement, one that redefined what it meant to listen, to connect, and to heal. Lily had grown into a young woman, still softly humming her unique melodies that spoke volumes to those who truly listened. Though she rarely spoke, her actions echoed louder than any words could. She had become an icon for countless families and children navigating the world of autism and sensory challenges. The sanctuary now stood as a sprawling campus of peaceful gardens, therapy rooms, and animal habitats, welcoming thousands each year. It was a place where silence wasn't empty, but filled with understanding, where children found solace and strength without pressure or judgment. On a bright spring morning, a large crowd gathered for the unveiling of a new wing, the Lily Grace Caldwell Center for Communication and Compassion. The building was designed to be fully sensory-friendly, incorporating music therapy rooms, quiet zones, and interactive spaces for children and animals to bond. Charles Renner stood at the podium. Looking out over the crowd, his voice was steady and full of emotion. When I first met Lily, I was a man who believed power was about control and dominance. But she showed me the true power lies in compassion, patience, and presence. This center is a testament to her gift and to all those who communicate in ways the world is only beginning to understand. Sarah, standing nearby, squeezed Lily's hand gently. Lily's eyes sparkled with quiet joy as she hummed softly, surrounded by children and animals who had become her family. As the ribbon was cut, the crowd applauded, many wiping tears from their eyes. This was more than a building, it was a beacon of hope, acceptance, and love. Later that day, Lily sat with Titan beneath a sprawling oak tree in the sanctuary's garden. The dog rested his head on her lap as she hummed a familiar tune. Around them, children played, their laughter mingling with birdsong and gentle wind chimes. A mother approached, holding her young son's hand. The boy had struggled with speech for years but now walked confidently alongside Lily, inspired by her example. Thank you, the mother said softly, for showing us all that different doesn't mean less, that silence can speak. Lily looked up and smiled faintly, her humming rising in a melody that felt like a warm embrace. In that moment, Sarah realized the true depth of their journey. What had started with a billionaire's laughter and a girl's quiet courage had grown into a legacy, one that would touch generations to come. She whispered, "Your light, Lily, will never fade." And as the sun set over the sanctuary, casting golden hues across the fields, it was clear, the world had been forever changed by a girl who listened with her heart, silenced a room with her presence, and taught everyone that sometimes the quietest voices are the strongest of all.